Thank you, Dean Klin. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank Andrew and Marie Bonzani for generously sponsoring this annual lecture in honor of the memory of Andrew's brothers, John and Lawrence, and Harper College of Arts and Sciences, Harper Edge, and the Thurgood Marshall Pre-Law Society for co-sponsoring this lecture. I'm honored to be this year's speaker. It's great to be back at Binghamton, where I had access to an extraordinary education, enjoyed my college years, and made friends for life. Today, I will share examples, including images and audio from my case, other stories, and laws that touch on suicide, self-harm, harassment, cyberstalking, non-consensual distribution of intimate imagery, sextortion, and other forms of online abuse. These topics may be uncomfortable and upsetting for some of you. Please feel free to excuse yourself at any time. I want to clarify two things up front. First, I cannot cover everything during this lecture. So I made a section on my website with details and links to penal codes, additional information, and resources. I'll share the URL at the end. Second, I am not here to tell you to shun social media, avoid all apps, or stay away from the internet. Technology, the internet, and social media are some of the greatest gifts of the 21st century. While these gifts can be extraordinarily positive, negative and sometimes devastating behaviors have emerged through their use. Online abuse is one of the most important conversations today, especially for college students. According to the Pew Research Center, 91% of Americans consider online abuse a problem, and adults ages 18 to 29 are more likely than any other age group to report experiencing it. This is a glimpse of what they experience: name-calling, purposeful embarrassment, physical threats, sustained harassment, and sexual harassment. So why did I become a cyberbullying and online abuse prevention advocate? The first half of 2014 was a very good time for me. I started a new full-time position and my first semester as an adjunct professor in communications new media. I was living a good, typical life. At the end of May, I met someone who presented himself as divorced and unattached. We had a short, intimate relationship. I then hired him as my personal trainer, and we shifted to a strictly platonic relationship. More than a month after our relationship was strictly platonic, I received private messages from a Facebook account in the name of Jane Tyson. After the last message was sent, the profile name was changed to Red Fox and the account was deactivated. I was surprised and I reached out to him. He said he'd speak with her and she'd stop. He did, and she stopped for 3 weeks. Then I received 11 voice messages. There were plenty of insults, but now she included that she was having me followed and more.
Well, you know what, bitch? It's not gonna happen anymore. I'm gonna stay in New York as long as I can, you fuck. And I'm gonna make sure you never see that man again, bitch. I ain't playing and I ain't joking. Cause I'm all set up to stay there. Disgusting. So if you think you're gonna ruin my relationship and you're gonna come between me and my boyfriend, guess what, bitch? You better be dreaming, cause it's not gonna happen. Oh, you'll see. You think this is a joke? You're gonna see. Watch. I take karate. I train in karate. You wanna come fight me, bitch. Cause I'm gonna rage and I ain't threatening you. So if you think you're gonna call the cops and charge me, you got it wrong, bitch.
I reached out to my trainer, Fred, again, and told him he needed to make it clear to her that we were not together. The next night, however, I received more messages with threats. I called my Nassau County Police Precinct. Within minutes, officers were at my apartment reviewing the messages. One of them suggested I get off of social media. I explained that social media was important for my work and my presence was important for my career. They asked what seemed like a million questions. They asked me if Jane Tyson was a real person. I didn't know. I had never met her. I had seen 2 Facebook accounts, Jane Tyson and Janie Tyson, that I assumed belonged to a woman who visited my trainer friend in the summer. They asked me if I had informed the person to stop contacting me. I didn't because I thought it was best to ignore it. They informed me that some people claim they were not aware the communication was unwanted. They suggested I send one message to inform the person that I did not want any contact. I filed a police report, and if they contacted me again, they may be arrested. Before they left, an officer told me, if you see her or she approaches you, call 911. If you're driving and you notice she's following you, call 911 and drive straight to the closest precinct, and let us know if she makes additional threats. With her account deactivated, I knew it would be difficult to send the do not contact message. I wrote it on my phone and copied it. I watched my phone for hours. As soon as the account was reactivated, I clicked in the message field, clicked paste, and hit send. I immediately took a screenshot that the message was sent, and seconds later, another that the message was seen. The screenshot of it being seen was key in my case. Then I blocked her. I thought my message and blocking her would stop the harassment. It didn't. The harassment went on and on. There were hundreds of private messages, posts, comments, blogs, posts on third-party content sites, emails, messages to my employer, talking about me on videos, messages from her friends, voodoo and other curses, degrading defamation, and more. I was afraid I was being followed. I stopped posting my locations and had escorts available to and from my car at work. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. I couldn't sleep and had nightmares. I also felt humiliated. One of the worst moments for me was at work in December 2014. I received a friend request from Lisa Michelle Kucharz. I knew this was going to be bad. When I opened it, I was shocked. Besides the insults, defamation, and threats of violence, she doxed me, but with my parents' address. She posted that people should go there to have sex with me and watch me have sex. While she was posting on the impersonation account, she was sending my connections friend requests from it. I lost it. I sobbed uncontrollably at work. This became a turning point in my case when the Nassau County Police decided to issue subpoenas to identify the perpetrator. Unfortunately, it would take 30 to 90 days to get the results. Ms. Tyson's round-the-clock wrath seemed unstoppable. I was documenting incidents at all hours of the day and night. The last weekend of January 2015 will forever be known to me as the Instagram weekend. Ms. Tyson and her friends left more than 100 comments on my Instagram posts. There were insults, threats of violence, and revolting prejudice remarks. I couldn't take it anymore. I let my trainer friend know I would no longer train with him or be seen with him. I deactivated my social media accounts. At the time, I couldn't deactivate Instagram, so I deleted it. Guess what? Getting off of social media did not make the abuse stop. My harasser posted blog after blog. She posted about me on other people's social media pages. She sent me messages through my website. When I closed the site's contact form, she sent me emails. The information from the subpoena came back, indicating that the person carrying out the attacks was in Canada, and I was informed by the Nassau County Police could not further pursue the case because aggravated harassment was a misdemeanor and not an extraditable offense. I couldn't live like this. I first hired North American Investigations, a private investigation firm. Then I hired Bruce Anderson, a cyber investigator who worked in collaboration with the law firm of Voorhees, Sater, Seymour, and Pease. I expected they'd find out who was behind the Jane and Janie Tyson Facebook accounts and maybe some of the blogs. Their investigation revealed the suspect's name, Dion Tyson, former legal name, contact information, and some of her social media accounts. She also was connected to the blogs and the post on the third-party content site, impersonation accounts, menacing Instagram accounts, and more. At the time, I was surprised to learn that 7 of the social media accounts that claimed to be Mrs. Tyson's friends were Ms. Tyson herself. The affidavit included that the motive was to harass and cause serious alarm that served no lawful purpose. Then, a private investigator went to the Hamilton Police Service in Ontario, Canada, on my behalf. The Hamilton Police Service felt horrible for me, but said they couldn't pursue the case because I was in New York. So, the Nassau County Police couldn't pursue it because the accused was in Canada, and the Hamilton Police couldn't pursue it because the target was in New York. This is what targets of online abuse often face, even in different states in the U.S. Online abuse knows no boundaries, but often jurisdictional issues, varying laws, and outdated reporting policies leave targets without recourse or forced to endure a difficult and time-consuming path to justice. However, at this point in my ordeal, I was fortunate to have been introduced to Manit Zemmel, an Ontario and New York attorney. Ms. Zemmel researched the jurisdictional issue of my criminal complaint and found that Canadian criminal law applied, and Ontario law enforcement and Ontario courts should have jurisdiction. She advocated on my behalf, and shortly after, Hamilton Police Service Detective David Suchida was assigned to my case. It was now June 2015. I had been ruthlessly harassed for 9 months. I provided Detective Suchida with a lengthy initial statement and more documents than imaginable. While the investigation was underway, the harassment continued. Several times a week, almost every week, I shared new information with Detective Suchida. Within weeks, Ms. Tyson came to Long Island and stayed about 10 minutes from where I lived. I now had to be even more careful not sharing my locations and avoiding places I thought she could be. My concerns were right. When she was in New York, she hid in the bathroom of a martial arts studio when she heard I was going to be there. She also followed me into a park and watched me for around an hour. I only knew because she wrote about it online, including my name, and I received a Google alert. The investigation continued for more than 5 months, all while I continued to be harassed. Eventually, in December 2015, Ms. Tyson was arrested in Ontario and charged with criminal harassment. Her release restrictions included not communicating with me directly or indirectly. In September 2016, she was arrested for obstruction. This time, she required bail for her release, and among other things, she was not to go to New York or use computers or other devices with internet access. She eventually pleaded guilty to criminal harassment on July 31st, 2017. 2 months later, Ms. Tyson was sentenced to 6 months in jail, a 2-year probation that included a ban from accessing the internet, and a 10-year weapons ban. A month after the sentencing, my story was shared with media outlets. People began to reach out to me, mostly parents whose children were experiencing cyberbullying and adults facing some form of online abuse. Everyone needed information and resources. While my case is considered a success story in all areas of my life, I try to keep it real. This lecture is no exception. What I'm about to tell you has not yet been shared publicly. Days after my harasser's probation ended, she began publicly posting about me again. She threatened and tried to have me arrested. She attempted to have me banned from entering Canada and taunted me about it. And again, she made threats of violence. I filed another local police report in May 2022. Due to the complicated nature of my international case, I was referred to the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, and I contacted the C.A. Goldberg Law Firm. Once again, I found myself preparing documentation and statements and consulting with attorneys. My case was discussed with ADAs and a detective in the DA's office. Then, the case was referred to the Nassau County Police Department detective. This case is a good example of proving a target was clearly identified without using their name. My harasser shared unique details about me, my relationship with my former trainer friend, and the previous case. She wrote a blog about me and the previous case, and she shared a link to it in her social media bios. She not only posted about my social media posts, but she also shared them in quotes and screenshots to identify me and to intimidate me. While the Nassau County Police Detective and I liaised with the Hamilton Police to have them investigate, the harassment escalated. Using another alias, Ms. Tyson sent me nearly 300 direct messages with insults, anti-Semitic remarks, and threats of violence. She eventually was officially cautioned and warned by Hamilton Police not to communicate with me directly or indirectly, and was informed that if she did, she would be arrested. This gives you an idea of what I experienced, an ordeal with long-lasting effects that changed the trajectory of my life and opened my eyes to the devastating impact of cyberbullying and online abuse. I will forever be grateful to Sergeant Suchita, Mani Zemmel, all the detectives, law enforcement officers, ADAs, district attorney, Crown attorneys, victim witness assistance reps, investigators, attorneys, my employers, workplace security, therapists, family, and friends for everything they've done for me. Now, let's dive into the law and online abuse, starting with where it takes place. Online abuse can happen with any device that's connected to the internet or electronic communication. According to the Pew Research Center, social media sites are the most commonly reported venue for online abuse for all age groups. For adults 18 to 29, it also often occurs on online gaming, text and messaging app, online dating, forums or discussion sites, and email. More severe forms of online abuse are more likely to happen in some venues, with the number one place being online dating. In addition, 45% of the more severe cases, like mine, can happen in multiple venues. Now let's look at types of online abuse that are unlawful, starting with aggravated harassment. Aggravated harassment in connection with online abuse is when a person uses electronic communication to communicate a threat to cause physical harm to another person or their property, or to a member of their family or household. It also includes phone calls intended to harass or threaten, whether or not a conversation takes place. Unlike the threats of aggravated harassment, cyberstalking involves a person using tech to cause reasonable fear or to create mental or emotional harm. It could include causing a target to reasonably fear for their own physical health or safety or well-being, or a family member, pet, or service animal. It could involve repeat communication that leaves a target feeling emotionally distressed, or repeat communication that causes mental or emotional harm after a perpetrator was informed to cease. It could involve a perpetrator communicating with a target's place of employment or business after they were informed to stop. It also could involve the unauthorized tracking of a person through a GPS or similar device. Another cruel form of online abuse is the non-consensual distribution of intimate imagery. The good news is now 48 states, the District of Columbia, Guam, and Puerto Rico have laws against it. Unfortunately, the states' laws vary, and many of them include considerations for the offender's motivation. In New York State, non-consensual distribution of intimate imagery is when someone with the intent to cause harm to the emotional, financial, or physical welfare of another person intentionally disseminates or publishes a still or video of that person who is identifiable from the image or information displayed with it without the person's consent, and the image depicts an exposed intimate part of the other person or the other person engaging in sexual conduct, and the actor knew or reasonably should have known the person depicted intended for it to remain private. FYI, Massachusetts and South Carolina are the two states that do not have laws against it. When I began researching cyberbullying's impact and how to prevent it, I was heartbroken to learn about youth who experienced cyberbullying and subsequently died by or attempted suicide. I felt their pain and fears. I understood their feelings of hopelessness, embarrassment, and more. During this time, I learned about Amanda Todd, a teen who shared her story of years of sextortion, cyberbullying, and bullying, and weeks later died by suicide. In 2022, 10 years after her death, a man in the Netherlands was sentenced in British Columbia for his crimes against her: extortion, child luring, and criminal harassment, and the possession of child pornography. He used 22 different aliases to chat with her and demanded webcam shows. He made persistent threats, including that he would post and send out her images if she didn't send him more, and he did. I urge all of you to watch Amanda Todd's video for a deeper understanding of the impact of sextortion, cyberbullying, and bullying. In New York State, sextortion is covered by laws concerning coercion, and it's when someone compels a person to do something or not to do something, including to produce, disseminate, or otherwise display an image depicting nudity of such person or depicting such person engaged in sexual conduct. The FBI has seen a huge increase in the number of cases involving youth sextortion. In May, the Pipe Dream reported a rise in sextortion crimes on campus, citing cases that involved fraud and larceny. When property is obtained through sextortion, the behavior falls under extortion by larceny. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you think more than half of college students have engaged in sexting? A 2023 study of college students found more than 3/4 have engaged in some form of sexting, with the majority of that sexting consensual and reciprocal. According to the law, sexting is when a person intentionally uses electronic means to initiate or engage in communication that depicts or describes, either in words or images, actual or simulated nudity, sexual conduct, or sadomasochistic abuse. Sexting between consenting adults is legal. But sexting by an adult with a minor or sexting between minors is illegal. Minors cannot consent to sexting. Another concern today is the rise in hate crimes and hate speech. I've often been asked why my harasser wasn't also charged with a hate crime, because she made many public anti-Semitic remarks about me and to me. Offensive speech, even when hateful, in and of itself is most often protected. In New York, for hateful speech to be considered part of a hate crime, a person carries out a criminal act that is motivated in whole or substantial part by the perceived identity or beliefs of the target. It's also unlawful in New York to impersonate someone online with the intent to obtain a benefit or injure or defraud someone. Now let's move on to a form of online abuse that is addressed under civil law: defamation. Defamation is when a person makes false statements or accusations about another and publishes those statements to a third party, either spoken or in writing, and those statements damage the reputation, character, or integrity of that person. The false statement must clearly identify the target, and the person who made the statement knew or should have known they were false. In New York, one can be sued for defamatory statements posted online that meet the criteria, even if they have been deleted. By another show of hands, how many of you heard of this summer's U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Counterman versus Colorado? The Supreme Court overturned a stalking conviction, sharing a new view on what speech is protected and what speech is a threat. Cyber Civil Rights Initiative President and University of Miami Professor of Law, Dr. Mary Ann Franks explained in an NPR interview that this ruling means that a perpetrator could defend their behavior by proving that in their mind, their communication was welcome. In my opinion, this ruling is dangerous and does not make sense. Another challenge many targets of online abuse in the U.S. face is having abusive posts removed from third-party content sites. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act includes that internet platforms hosting third-party content are not liable for what those third parties post. Many of these sites won't consider removing content without a court order. Now that we've covered some forms of unlawful online abuse, let's talk about what you can do if you or someone you know experiences it. Before I share my tips, let's hear from some experts about the most important thing a person should do when experiencing online abuse. Attorney Carrie Goldberg suggests resist the urge to respond, screenshot everything, and never worry alone. Digital forensic expert Ryan Duquette suggests preserve the evidence. A lot of the evidence comes from online sources and is here today and gone tomorrow. The Cyberbullying Research Center co-founders responded together. Professor Samir Hinduja shared, victims around the world reach out for help every day. Most, though, fail to provide user account information, screenshots, and screen recordings, which platforms need in order to action violative content and sanction aggressors. Always save digital evidence of harm you experience. And Professor Justin Patchen added, document everything, not only the evidence of the harm, but also contacts or meetings with school officials, police officers, or anyone else you have sought help from. While Mani Zemmel was a tremendous help for me in my criminal case, she represented the plaintiffs in the largest Canadian defamation award against an individual, so I asked her about the most important things a person should do when experiencing online defamation. She suggests to consult a lawyer with expertise in this specific area about your legal options. Online defamation is a complex area involving many issues. She also suggests to not send a cease and desist letter threatening litigation unless you plan on following up with litigation. There are additional tips from Ms. Zemmel on my site. And I asked Annie Seifela what advice she has for pre-law students who are interested in this specialty. She shared that law students who are interested in an emerging practice area where they can make an immediate difference should consider specializing in technology-facilitated abuse. Tech abuse overlaps with every area of law. I appreciate all the experts' advice and their efforts to make our online lives safer and better. Now, here are some of my tips based on my experience, research, advice I received, and my mistakes. If you think your life or physical well-being is in immediate danger, call law enforcement. If you're on campus, call the University Police Emergency Line. If you're off campus, call 911. Don't engage. Nothing good can come of it. Save the evidence, all of it, but be aware that not all documentation is created equal. For static images, screenshots with full URLs are the best. If you're on the go, on your phone, or otherwise can't get the full URL, then any screenshot is better than none. For videos or audio, do your best to capture them and include the full URL. Sort your documents in folders. Find a naming convention that is consistent and makes finding documents easy. Regularly place your files into the folders. Save your documentation in multiple locations, like a computer, external hard drive, and secure file sharing platform. Send one message to the responsible account, like do not contact me again or stop. After, I'll repeat that, after you document an incident, inform the platform about abusive content. Don't give up if the platform's initial response isn't helpful. I had to report abusive content multiple times and enlist my friends to do the same till it was removed. To my knowledge, the Cyberbullying Research Center has the most comprehensive list of contact information to report online abuse and cyberbullying at cyberbullying.org/report. To the best of your ability, prohibit those engaging in abuse from contacting you or accessing your timelines by blocking them. Blocking did not stop my harasser, and to my knowledge, in the more severe cases, it usually doesn't work on its own. That said, it's still better to block than not. This also makes it clear that the communication is unwanted. One thing I often suggest, especially for youth who are experiencing cyberbullying, is to also block mutual connections of the offending accounts. You want to cut off the sources of information that are being used to cause harm. The best advice I can give you when reporting incidents to law enforcement is be prepared. Bring organized printouts to your local police station. Be able to explain the situation fully and succinctly. Ask questions, take notes, write down follow-up instructions. If possible, have someone with you. Having support is very helpful. Follow up. If necessary, request to speak with a supervisor. Consider contacting an attorney to explain relevant laws and how to best engage law enforcement in your specific case. If the parties involved attend the same school, contact the appropriate university or school representative. Review policy and procedures and follow the general steps outlined in engaging law enforcement. Consider contacting an attorney. You may want someone to review your specific situation, explain applicable laws for your location and your options, advocate on your behalf, or represent you. You may want advice on whether you should speak publicly about your case, and if you do, what to avoid and how to refer to the accused. You also may want to know what are the possible legal ramifications of your own actions. Find support to help you prepare to work with school officials, law enforcement, or the judicial process. Inform a small group of friends or family. Consider counseling. I greatly benefited from counseling and can't imagine how I would have made it through my ordeal without it. Practice self-care. These aren't just some trendy buzzwords. Find ways to shake off stress, rest, and care for your mind and body. Consider informing your employer. This was very helpful in my case, not only for my safety and my colleagues' and students' safety, but also to avoid them being surprised when contacted by my harasser or when they saw defamatory posts and comments. The next two tips are good for everyone, not just someone who's experiencing online abuse. Set up Google Alerts to inform you if information about you is posted online, and purchase domains of your name and variations of it to avoid anyone else from purchasing them. You don't have to build websites on them to own them. Experiencing online abuse is challenging, but you don't have to go it alone. Here are a handful of resources. There are more on my site in the special section for this lecture. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which provides free and confidential emotional support 24/7. The Stomp Out Bullying Live Help Chat Crisis Line, which is free and confidential for people ages 13 to 24 with issues around cyberbullying and bullying. As I mentioned earlier, the Cyberbullying Research Center has the most comprehensive list of contact information to report online abuse and a lot of other valuable information. If your day-to-day physical safety is at risk, I suggest you visit VARC's Safety Plans page on Binghamton University's website to learn practical ways to stay safe. Again, there are more resources on my site.
I have a constituent, Lisa Michelle Kucharz, who really survived a terrible ordeal with a stalker, and instead of cursing the darkness, she's chosen to lit a candle and advocate very hard on this issue. So what this bill would do would create a task force that would make recommendations to schools about how to handle cyberbullying that takes place outside of its walls, and that leads generally to creation of policies and procedures that would help deter cyberbullying at all levels for all members of our society. We need some good thinking and good planning to go into this issue because it's time we put an end to cyberbullying.
I understand many of you are wondering how advocacy goes from an idea to meaningful change. The truth is that there isn't only one path. There are many ways to accomplish advocacy goals. I reached out to my elected officials. I shared my story, anecdotal information from students, research, and the need for action. I heard back from several. I shared many suggestions, including 2 that I felt strongly about: the Cyberbullying Task Force and establishing an official definition for cyberbullying. The task force bill was introduced into the New York State Senate and Assembly. Initially, it didn't move too far. Then, one year, it passed in the Senate but wasn't voted on in the Assembly. The following year, the opposite happened. For 3 years, I reached out to almost every New York State senator and Assembly person to remind them of the importance of cyberbullying prevention initiatives. I also asked others to contact them. I spoke with legislators at community events. I held events, was a panelist, and discussed the legislation and other initiatives on social media and with advocates, educators, and news outlets. In May 2021, it passed in both houses. 5 months later, it was signed by Governor Hochul. Keeping it real again, the legislation had time conditions for when the task force was supposed to form and report back. The deadlines passed. In 2022, I reached out to all of the sponsors and co-sponsors. I heard back from several, and 3 senators reached out to the governor and leadership of both houses, encouraging them to form the task force. According to the last update I received from the governor's office, they were still finalizing appointments and hoping it would convene soon. I'm very grateful for every email and call with legislators and their teams, whether it was to share ideas or explain opinions. One thing that I did that surprised people was I reached out to legislators who voted against the bill to learn why. It gave me insights, an opportunity to persuade changes in votes in the future, and helped me prepare for future advocacy work. This task force is one small step. There's a lot more that needs to be done in New York and in the US to address cyberbullying and online abuse. And you can be the difference. Here are some of the ways you can make a difference right now. Be an upstander. If you see someone you know experiencing online abuse, reach out and offer support. Share the information you learned today or resources from my site or other credible sources. Help them document or navigate reporting. Just listen to them or ask them how they'd like you to support them. Be kind online. If you're feeling less than positive, take a beat. Don't lash out online. Reach out to your elected officials. Share stories, research, and the need for action. Be specific about your desired outcome and invite them to discuss it with you. Here are some current opportunities to address issues facing online abuse, cyberbullying, and pending bills. Reach out to your New York State legislators to let them know it's time New York had an official definition for cyberbullying. Reach out to Governor Hochul to ask her to sign the bill that prohibits unlawful dissemination or publication of intimate images created by digitization, otherwise known as deepfake pornography. Reach out to your congressional representatives to ask them to pass the Stopping Harmful Image Exploitation and Limiting Distribution SHIELD Act. For everyone who resides outside of New York or the US, learn about the laws in your area, find the gaps, and advocate for positive change. Reach out to all of your elected officials, town, city, county, state, and federal, to let them know that cyberbullying and online abuse are great concerns of yours. Pre-law students interested in this specialty should consider becoming a member of the New York Cyber Abuse Task Force. They have resources for people who are interested in learning more about being tech abuse legal advocates. They're hosting a virtual conference in October, and it could be a good way for you to network. There is so much more we can do, and we must do. With so much of our lives taking place online today, we owe it to ourselves to make our cyber world safe. As promised, on my site, there is more information and links to penal codes, resources, experts, tips, Amanda Todd's videos, and ways you can make a difference at lisa-michelle.com/Bing2023. I want to thank Erin Cody, Leah Joggers, the Anderson Center staff, and the entire Binghamton University team for everything they did to organize this lecture. Thank you again to the Bonzanis, Harper College of Arts and Sciences, Harper Edge, the Thurgood Marshall Pre-Law Society, and Dean Klin. And thank you for your interest in the law and online abuse, and for the amazing things I know you will accomplish to make our future better and brighter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Everyone, I'm Erin Cody. It's an honor to be with you this evening. Thank you to everyone on Zoom for Zooming in with us. This topic has been something that has been on our hearts, I think, a lot with all the different things that are going on in the world right now. I think it's a very present topic, and I'm sure many of us have questions. For those of us who are in person, we welcome you to our reception just outside in the lobby to connect with Lisa. And for those of you on Zoom, you've had the opportunity to submit your questions online. And so thank you very much for those. We have one question.
Sure.
And so then from there, we will disperse and enjoy some refreshments together. So Lisa, could you talk a little bit about how this has changed your life? I think we've heard so many details, and I'm just overwhelmed at how this was not how you set out to spend your career trajectory. And if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of our students are thinking about, I have to have it figured out right now, what my career journey is. And it seems like that was not necessarily how things evolved for you.
Right, so that's a great question, thank you. Being an advocate in this area was not on my radar whatsoever. I had heard of some youth who experiencing bullying and cyberbullying, but I had no idea how devastating the impact was until I experienced it firsthand and began to research it. Not right away, right? Not with the first set of messages that I received, but shortly after, I was asking myself, how? Like really, how on earth do teens deal with cyberbullying? At that point, I didn't realize that also tweens were dealing with cyberbullying. I distinctly remembered like thinking, oh, teens. And as the harassment continued, those feelings deepened, and I was researching, and I learned that we didn't have a law in New York State that defined cyberbullying, let alone addressed it. And I felt very strongly that we needed laws, at least to define it, and then tools for schools, organizations, law enforcement, and other initiatives. I also strongly believe in positive initiatives that reinforce communicating with kindness, empathy, and respect, starting at a young age. So I advocate for that as well. So how did this change the trajectory of my life? I had just started a new job and just started teaching as an adjunct. And initially, it's no secret, this broke me. That's the best way that I can explain it. So there was that part of it. I did not function well, personally or professionally. The emotional drain on me was intense, and at a time when I could have continued to progress with my career in an upward fashion, I knew that I needed to take a pause and at least not move up. And at one point, I actually took a break from full-time work to both address my mental health and work on advocacy. It has changed me in many ways. You know, thinking about taking care of myself and the others around me, and also just wanting to make meaningful change in this area, like that has become my priority, and that impacts my career and, my personal life as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and you'll have an opportunity to connect more with Lisa at our reception today. Thank you all for coming. If we can be of support to you in Harper Edge, our students, please don't hesitate to be in touch with us. We want to connect you to wonderful experiences to develop that competitive edge for your personal, intellectual, and professional lives. Thank you so much, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you all.